particularly going after her wonderful half-sister, Samantha.
And suddenly you just have my mom, who's classy and quiet and there, and then...
For years, Meghan Markle has worked tirelessly to construct an image that gleamed with polish. The glowing Duchess, the modern mother, the Hollywood actress who walked into the stiff corridors of Buckingham Palace and seemed to breathe love back into the monarchy. Every appearance, every carefully chosen word, every photograph of her cradling a baby bump seemed to belong to a narrative that was scripted, produced, and directed to perfection. Meghan was not simply a duchess, she was a symbol, the woman, who embodied compassion, authenticity, and the kind of maternal warmth that royal history so desperately wanted after decades of coldness and distance. But what happens when that image, that entire glossy facade, is ripped apart? Not by tabloids, not by critics, but by her own flesh and blood. It all began when Samantha Markle, Meghan's estranged half-sister, broke her silence in a way that no one saw coming. For years, Samantha had been written off by the press. Branded as jealous, bitter, and opportunistic, she was pushed aside as background noise to Meghan's fairy tale. She was the sister Meghan publicly claimed she barely knew, the woman portrayed as hungry for attention, dismissed as nothing more than a footnote. But Samantha, long silenced, returned to the spotlight with fury sharpened by years of humiliation. And this time, her words carried a weight that couldn't simply be brushed aside. Because what Samantha chose to attack was not Meghan's personality, not her Hollywood past, not even her marriage to Prince Harry. It was Meghan's claim to motherhood itself. In a live broadcast that sent shockwaves through audiences worldwide, Samantha declared that Meghan's pregnancies were not real, not partially exaggerated, not misunderstood, not hidden, fake, staged, performed with props and elaborate PR theatrics, designed to manipulate global sympathy. In that single moment, Samantha punctured the most sacred part of Meghan's carefully curated identity. The idea of her as a devoted mother who fought against the cruelty of the press for the sake of her children. For years, Meghan had perfected the imagery of motherhood. The glowing bump, lovingly cradled during public appearances. The tearful interviews where she spoke of her struggles as an expectant mother under scrutiny. The vulnerable sound bites that made her appear as though she was fighting the world to protect her children. Those moments had convinced millions. They had softened critics and turned Meghan into a symbol of resilience. But when Samantha spoke, she did not whisper gossip. She delivered accusations with measured, calculated precision, insisting that what the world saw was a production, a performance choreographed down to the smallest detail. And just when the audience was reeling from Samantha's words, another voice entered the storm. A voice that turned whispers into scandal, speculation into something far more dangerous. She called herself DL. Unlike anonymous online critics, DL didn't posture as a troll or a commentator. She stepped into the spotlight claiming not only knowledge but direct involvement. She said she was the surrogate, the woman who had carried Archie, the woman who had carried Lilibet, the woman who was promised privacy, discretion, and financial compensation in exchange for silence, and who, instead, was allegedly erased from the story while Meghan performed the role of glowing duchess for cameras around the world. DL didn't come armed with snide remarks or speculation. She came, she claimed, with proof. Hospital bills, medical records, a signed non-disclosure agreement that hinted at a carefully engineered cover-up. Her words were devastating. I was promised privacy and compensation. Instead, I was erased. Meghan wore a fake belly and the world believed it. The sentence landed like a bomb. For years, Meghan had been photographed tenderly, holding her stomach as though guarding the life inside her. For years, commentators had praised her glow, her radiant smile, her bravery. But DL painted those images as nothing more than performance, art, staged theater to secure global adoration. The internet did not hesitate to react. Almost instantly, old clips of Meghan resurfaced. Clips where her baby bump appeared to fold strangely as she bent forward. Clips where she cradled her stomach almost obsessively, to the point that critics mocked it as excessive. At the time, such observations were dismissed as cruel conspiracy theories. But now, with DL's claims echoing across media platforms, those old debates about the moon bump roared back into the public eye with renewed, almost vicious force. What once looked like the natural pride of an expectant mother now seemed like an actress overplaying her part. Samantha's accusations were shocking enough, but DL's emergence gave the scandal an entirely new dimension. Meghan could laugh off her sister as jealous, bitter, irrelevant. But how do you dismiss someone who arrives with documents, timelines, and testimony? How do you explain away someone who claims to have been the very woman hidden behind your most public image? For Meghan, the timing could not have been worse. For years, she and Harry had insisted they were victims of unfair media treatment, subjected to lies and manipulation. Now the accusations were turned against her, alleging that she had orchestrated the biggest deception of all. It was no longer just family drama. It was global scandal. And with every passing hour, the storm grew louder, sharper, more catastrophic for Meghan and Harry. At the heart of this scandal is not simply the question of whether Meghan carried her children. It is the far more dangerous suggestion that she deliberately constructed an illusion of motherhood, one that fooled not only her husband and his royal family, but millions of supporters around the world. For people who had cheered the births of Archie and Lilibet, who had believed the glossy photographs and the glowing headlines, the betrayal felt personal. Meghan had invited the world into her story, asked for their compassion, begged for their understanding. And now, critics claimed, she had built that story on fraud. The narrative unraveled with brutal speed. Tabloids dissected DL's documents. Commentators replayed Meghan's interviews with a new lens, highlighting moments that now looked calculated rather than sincere. Conspiracy forums that had once been dismissed as fringe suddenly flooded mainstream feeds. And in the midst of it all, Samantha Markle's voice grew louder, more insistent. She didn't come across as desperate anymore. She came across as vindicated. For years, she had been the sister mocked and ignored. Now, she was the one who appeared to have been telling the truth all along. The scandal wasn't just about Meghan anymore. It became about the Sussex brand, the empire Meghan and Harry had built in California after leaving the monarchy. Their documentaries, their speeches, their multi-million-dollar deals with streaming giants, all had leaned heavily on the image of them as devoted parents fighting for their children's privacy. That image sold books. That image secured contracts. That image made them relatable. But if that image collapsed, what would be left? Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Was Harry complicit? Did he know? Had he too been deceived? Or was he part of the performance, smiling for cameras while knowing the truth? The questions grew darker, the theories more elaborate, the speculation increasingly ruthless. And Meghan, the woman who once prided herself on controlling the narrative, suddenly found herself unable to silence it. This was no ordinary scandal. This wasn't about a wardrobe mishap or a leaked argument. This was about the very core of her identity: motherhood. The one role that made Meghan untouchable. The one thing even her harshest critics had hesitated to question out of respect for the sanctity of children. Now, that sanctuary had been invaded, and the storm showed no signs of passing. What began as one sister's accusation spiraled into something with global reach. From London to Los Angeles, from royal watchers to casual viewers, everyone had an opinion. Was Meghan the victim of a smear campaign? Or was she the architect of the greatest deception in modern royal history? Every new clip, every resurfaced photo, every leaked document fueled the fire. And Meghan, for the first time, looked cornered. The fairy tale had been cracked before, by Megxit, by Oprah, by Harry's memoir, but this was different. This was not about politics, not about racism, not about the monarchy. This was about the most primal bond of all, the bond between mother and child. If that was proven false or even doubted on a large scale, Meghan's entire empire would shatter. And that is why this scandal refuses to die. Because it is not just gossip, it is not just drama, it is betrayal, deception, identity itself. Samantha Markle may have lit the match. DL may have poured the gasoline. But the fire now burns on its own, fueled by a public that feels it has been lied to, manipulated, played like extras in Meghan Markle's royal performance. And as the smoke rises, one question lingers like poison in the air. If Meghan lied about this, what else has she lied about? For years, Meghan Markle cultivated an image that seemed untouchable. She was the glowing duchess, the humanitarian mother, the woman who swept into a centuries-old monarchy and promised a fresh, modern chapter. Her every move appeared carefully, staged, calculated to send a message of authenticity, resilience, and maternal pride. When she was photographed tenderly cradling her baby bump, the world swooned. When she cried about her struggles as an expectant mother under relentless tabloid pressure, the world sympathized. When she spoke about her children, Archie and Lilibet, her words were painted as pure, vulnerable truth. Millions believed her. Millions defended her. Millions thought they were watching a woman bravely trying to shield her children from cruelty. But all of that began to unravel the day Samantha Markle, the half-sister Meghan worked so hard to erase, returned to the spotlight with a fury sharpened by years of humiliation. For so long, Samantha had been dismissed as jealous, bitter, desperate. She was portrayed as irrelevant. The forgotten sibling Meghan claimed she barely knew. But on live video, Samantha flipped the narrative upside down. She wasn't rambling, she wasn't gossiping, she was calm, pointed, and brutal. She accused Meghan of faking her pregnancies, not once, but twice. She said what millions had dared not believe, that Meghan's public displays of motherhood were staged performances, built on deception, carried out with fake bumps and elaborate PR smoke and mirrors. The shock was instant. Meghan's identity as a mother was her strongest shield. It was the one role her critics had rarely dared to touch out of respect for the sanctity of children. But Samantha tore through that shield like it was paper. And just as the world was still trying to process those words, another figure stepped forward, one that transformed rumor into something much more dangerous. She called herself DL. She did not come whispering gossip. She came forward with a story that, if true, could destroy Meghan Markle's image forever. DL said she was the surrogate, the woman who carried Archie, the woman who carried Lilibet. She claimed she had been promised privacy, protection, and financial compensation. Instead, she was erased, silenced, written out of history, while Meghan performed the role of glowing duchess in front of millions. DL didn't arrive empty-handed. She produced what she claimed were hospital bills, medical records, and even a signed non-disclosure agreement. If those documents are authentic, they are nothing short of explosive, because they suggest that Meghan's pregnancies were not only staged, but carefully concealed through legal intimidation. For years, Meghan's defenders mocked conspiracy, theories about folding baby bumps or moon bumps. They laughed at the idea that her belly had slipped or bent strangely during public outings. But with DL's testimony, those old clips resurfaced everywhere. Footage of Meghan bending and her bump seemingly collapsing in on itself. Photos where she cradled her stomach with almost theatrical exaggeration. What once looked like a doting mother now appeared under the new lens like an actress selling an illusion. The timing could not have been worse. The palace, as always, remained silent. But silence in this case fueled suspicion. For years, royal watchers had quietly noted the oddities. No traditional hospital steps photographs. No senior royals standing, proudly alongside Meghan after the births. At the time, it was framed as Meghan and Harry doing things their own way. But now, in hindsight, critics argue it looks deliberate, as though the palace itself had chosen distance, aware there were details best left hidden. Harry, insiders say, spiraled. Once the prince who prided himself on honesty and vulnerability, he is now described as furious and frantic, raging at staff, obsessing over coverage, demanding that lawyers find ways to shut down the story. For a man who built his brand on transparency about mental health, the image of Harry storming through rooms, panicked and enraged, makes him look unstable. Meghan, by contrast, went on the offensive. She instructed lawyers to draft cease and desist letters threatening lawsuits against anyone repeating Samantha's or DL's claims. But here lies the trap. Legal action risks dragging the very records Meghan most fears into the open. Courtrooms don't run on PR. They run on evidence, testimony, sworn documents. And if even a fraction of DL's files hold up under scrutiny, then Meghan's carefully built brand will not survive the impact. Because this is no longer just a PR problem, it's existential. Meghan built her identity on being a mother wronged, a mother fighting for her children. If it turns out she was never the one carrying them at all, then she isn't just guilty of exaggeration, she's guilty of deception. And betrayal, especially betrayal of millions who believed, is far more toxic than any tabloid headline. The danger doesn't stop there. This scandal has now spilled into royal history itself. The monarchy is built on bloodlines, legitimacy, succession. If Archie and Lilibet's origins are clouded in doubt, then so is their place in the royal line. For now, Buckingham Palace remains quiet, clinging to silence like a shield. But critics argue that silence is not protecting Archie and Lilibet. It is putting them at risk. Every day, Meghan and Harry refuse to answer. The questions grow louder. Do these children really hold their places in the line of succession? Should they? And if the palace is ever forced to intervene, the fallout will not just damage Meghan and Harry, it could tear into the institution itself. Meanwhile, Samantha's voice grows stronger. Once dismissed as bitter, she now speaks with an authority sharpened by vindication. She insists that Meghan manipulated not just the press but her own family. That Meghan lied to her daughter, Ashley, to keep her from attending the royal wedding. That Meghan has twisted narratives to erase anyone who stood in her way. And while Meghan threatens lawsuits, Samantha offers stories that sound uncomfortably plausible. For years, Meghan insisted she barely knew Samantha. But Samantha recalls childhood moments, conversations, and connections that don't vanish so easily. Meghan's insistence on erasure now looks less like truth and more like strategy. Harry, trapped between defending his wife and fearing the truth, is caught in a vice. His anger grows, his panic shows, and the man once beloved as Diana's brave son begins to look more like a prince unraveling. And Meghan. She faces a choice that grows more dangerous with every passing day. She can remain silent, hoping the scandal burns out. But silence looks like guilt. She can keep threatening lawsuits, but lawsuits risk exposing the very evidence she wants buried. Or she can come clean, admit to deception, confess to staging, risk the humiliation in exchange for a chance at rebuilding credibility. But would the public forgive her? That is the question that now haunts every headline, every podcast, every video dissecting her life. Meghan invited the world into her story. She asked for their compassion. She begged for their belief. If it turns out she was lying, then this isn't just a scandal. This is betrayal on a scale the public does not forget. Because scandals fade. But betrayal is permanent. The storm grows darker still. Because now, whispers suggest this scandal may outgrow Meghan and Harry altogether. If doubts about Archie and Lilibet's legitimacy continue to build, the monarchy itself may be forced to act, to investigate, to confirm, to protect the integrity of the royal line. And that, more than any lawsuit or headline, is Meghan and Harry's greatest fear. Not just losing their public image, not just losing contracts, but losing their children's place in royal history. And here's where the story sharpens into something unprecedented. Because this isn't just about two ex-royals and their brand. This is about succession. This is about bloodlines. This is about whether the children of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry truly belong in the royal line of succession. If doubts remain unresolved, critics argue, then their very titles and recognition are at risk. So the world waits, and the silence grows deafening. Meghan and Harry cling to lawyers in anger, but the questions are louder than ever. Was it all a performance? Were the baby bumps fake? Did DL truly carry those children? And if so, what does that make Meghan? The actress who fooled the world, or the mother who betrayed it? The stakes have never been higher. The scandal has never been darker. And as history shows, the palace may be silent for now, but silence never lasts forever. And when it breaks, the storm will not just consume Meghan and Harry. It could shake the monarchy itself. So now the question is yours. Do Meghan and Harry finally come clean, risk everything, and admit the truth? Or do they keep fighting, denying, and spinning, knowing that each passing day makes the betrayal sting deeper? Scandals fade. But betrayal defines you. And if Meghan and Harry don't act soon, this will not just be another headline. This will be their legacy. This is Crown and Controversy, unraveling the royals, one scandal at a time. Don't forget to subscribe.